Welcome to the MSJC Internet Authoring Videocast.
In this video, you'll be learning how to complete Review Assignment 4. Our client in this assignment is Kevin, and he wants us to work on another family page for the Tree and Book website. The page was created for the Ferris family with content provided by Linda Ferris White. Kevin is examining a new color scheme and design style for the page. A preview of the design that we'll create is shown in this figure here, which is going to be the home page, and then there's also a second page that will contain some images that we're going to transform using CSS. So all of the HTML content and the typographical and layout styles have already been created for us. Our task is to complete the work by writing the visual style sheet to incorporate Kevin's suggestions. So we're going to start by opening up the tb_visual3_txt.css file, the tb_visual4_txt.css file, the tb_ferris_txt.html file, and the tb_kathleen_txt.html file. As always, we'll add our name and date in there as we begin, and then save the files without the _txt portion of each of the file names. So here we are in Visual Studio. We're going to open up tb_ferris HTML, then Kathleen TXT HTML, and then the two style sheets, Visual3 TXT and Visual4 TXT.css. Just put in our name and author info here. Just to speed things up, I'll copy and paste that into each file. And then we want to go through and just do a save as for each file. Get rid of that _txt. So now we're ready to start. We're going to go into, in step 2 here, the tb_ferris HTML file, and then add the links for tb_base CSS, tb_styles3 CSS, and tb_visual3 CSS. So here we are in tb_ferris. In the head section, just underneath of title now, we'll go ahead and add those 3 links. So we've added a link for tb_base CSS, made its relationship style sheet, tb_styles3 CSS, also a style sheet, and tb_visual3 CSS, also a style sheet. Now in step 3, we're asked to scroll down, and within the main element header, after the H1 heading, we're going to insert a figure box containing the tb_ferris.png inline image with the alternate text reading Ferris family. And then we also want to identify that it'll be using an image map that we're going to create here in just a second in step 4. And the name of that image map is going to be portrait_map. And then finally for step 3, we need to add a figure caption with the text Kathleen Ferris and daughter Linda, 1957. So I'm just going to go into source view here. Here's the body, there's the header, and then there is the second header. That's right, they want us to go into main header. So there's the main element, there is the header element there with the H1. And right underneath of that H1 now, we just go ahead and add a figure element. Inside of the figure element will be the image which is a source of tb_ferris.png. We add the alt attribute of Ferris family, and then the use map attribute. Notice that there's a hashtag in here, and then the name of the image map that we're going to build here in the next step, which is going to be portrait_map. And then we also have a fig caption, which reads Kathleen Ferris and daughter Linda, 1957. Just clean that up a bit. Save our work with a Control S. Now move on to step 4 here. Directly below that figure box now we'll create the portrait map image map. So portrait map, as we said, is going to be the name of it, and then image map is the type. And it's going to contain 2 hotspots. A rectangular hotspot that'll be pointing to the Kathleen tb_kathleen.html file. And the top left coordinate of that hotspot will be at x10, y50. And the bottom coordinate will be at x192 and y223. So that's a rectangular hotspot. The alternate text will read Kathleen Ferris. And then we'll also create a circular hotspot, and that will point to the tb_linda.html file. And that will have a xy coordinate of 264, 108 for the center point of the circle, and then a radius of 80 pixels. The alternate text is going to read Linda Ferris-white. So right underneath of the figure element, there we add the image map. It has an attribute of name, and the name is assigned the value of all lowercase portrait_map. Now that must match identically to spelling and case of the name that we referenced up here in the new use map attribute for the image. So that's what links the image to this image map, and the image map then defines the coordinates that we use that'll be the hotspots within that image up above here, so that when the user clicks on the rectangular image, it'll go to this HTML page, tb_kathleen.html, and when they click on the circle, it'll take them to the tb_linda.html file. So for rectangle, you're going to have 4 coordinates. You start out with the xy for the top left, and then you add the xy for the bottom right. In a circle, you identify its coordinates, xy, for the center point, and then add the radius. And the href for that circle, as I said, is tb_linda.html, and then we've got the alternate text here, Linda Ferris-white. Save our work, Control S. In step 5, they ask us to study the rest of the HTML page, the content and the structure. So underneath of the header element that we were just working on, we've got now this article with an H1 that reads, "My mother, Kathleen Ferris," and has some paragraph text underneath of it, and then a citation. And then that ends the main, and then we've got a footer, and in the footer is several different navs that are all unordered lists. And that's pretty much it for the home page. So now in step 6, we're asked to go to the tb_visual3.css file. And in this file, we're going to create the graphic design styles for the page. So this is the one we'll be working on now, tb_visual3.css. And you can see, like in our previous review assignment, they've already added comments in here, which are the different sections that they'll refer to when they, in the instructions, have us add the various CSS rules in here. So in step 7 now, we'll go to the HTML styles section, create a style rule for the HTML element, and that will be to use the image file tb_back5.png as the background for the page. So underneath of HTML styles, HTML will be our selector, and then the declaration is just simply the background-image property, using the URL function then to point to the actual file that we wanted to be loaded there as the background image. In step 8, we're going to go to the page body styles section, and create a style rule for the body element that adds a left and right 3 pixel solid border with a color value of RGB 169, 130, 88. And then also add a box shadow to the right border with a horizontal offset of 25 pixels and a vertical offset of 0, and a 35 pixel blur with the color value being 53 RGB 5321.0, and then adds a mirror image of this shadow to the left border. So this is under page body styles now. We want to use body as the selector. We start with the border left and the border right. They're essentially the same, 3 pixels. They're solid, using the same RGB value of 169, 130, 88. But then for the box shadow, we add the initial shadow here, which is the RGB value of 5321.0, the offset of 25 pixels. And we don't really need to have the PX in there, but we'll put in 0 there for the Y offset. So this is the X offset here, 25 pixels. This is the Y offset. And then 35 pixels for the blur value. Then to get the mirror effect, we've got this RGB color of 5321.0, which is the same as we used here. But now we're going in the left direction instead of the right direction with our our X coordinate. So negative 25 pixels. Y is going to be 0. And again, we're going to use 35 for the blur value. So we'll go ahead and save that. And let's just go back now and take a look at this. We'll go ahead and run the Ferris HTML file. View it in our browser. So there's that background image that we had loaded up in there. And then here is the offset shadows that we're seeing left and right. And then while we're here, we can check. We can move over our mouse over the background image that we have here and make sure that our image map is working correctly. So you'll see that if you move your mouse over this image here, you should get the little pointy finger to show that that is indeed hyperlinked. And then also if you move over to the left image here, we should get the pointy finger. Again, that's where the 2 hyperlinks are. So we've got essentially the rectangled hyperlink here, and we have the circular hyperlink here. In step 9 now, we're going to go to the main styles section, create a rule for the main element that will apply the TB_back7 PNG file as the background image with the size of 100%, covering the entire background, no tiling, and positioned with respect to the padding box. Also, we'll add 2 inset box shadows, each with a 25 pixel blur and an RGB value of 71, 71, 71. Remember, that's a shade of gray. And then one with an offset of minus X, or the minus 10 pixels in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction. And then the other with horizontal and vertical being positive 10 pixels. So this is back in our TB Visual 3. With the main element being the selector. So we're down in the main section of the style sheet. Main is our selector. Here is the background property pointing to the TB_back7.png image, giving it 100% size, covering the entire browser's width. We're not going to repeat it. It's not a pattern. It's just a single image. And then using the padding box, and then being positioned with respect to the padding box. Then we added the box shadow with an inset value of RGB 71, 71, 71, and then we initially went in the negative direction, so negative 10 pixels, negative 10 pixels for the X and the Y, 25 pixel blur, and then another inset, same color, and then this time positive 10 pixels left or vertical and horizontal and vertical I should say, and a 25 pixel blur. So we'll save that. Let's go ahead and preview it. There you can see this is the inset blur that we just added here. And then notice too the background image, which is this kind of parchment paper. In step 10 now, we'll create a style rule for the H1 heading within the main header that adds the following two text shadows. So a shadow with the color value of RGB 221, 221, 221, offset of 1 pixel, no blurring, and a shadow with the color value of RGB 41, 41, 41, or notice it is RGBA, so we've got the alpha channel, which means that we're going to add transparency here. It'll be 0.9 opaque, so that's 90% opacity. And then the offsets for that one will be 5 pixels, and we'll have so that'll be in both directions, horizontal and vertical, and then a 20 pixel blur. So this is going to target the H1 element that's in the main header. So we want our selector then to reflect that. So main is the section that we're in, and then the subsection header, and then we're targeting specifically the H1 element. So we've added now a text shadow, so that's the text that's up above the image there. With this RGB value, again it's a gray. This is going to be a much lighter shade of gray because of the higher values that we're using for the RGB there. And then the 1 pixel horizontal, 1 pixel vertical offset. And no blur on that one. And then we use the RGB alpha, RGBA, which is 41, 41, 41.9, and that's 5 pixels, horizontal and vertical, 20 pixel blur. So let's save that, go ahead and preview it. And now if you look closely at the text there, you'll see the white outline, that's the initial text shadow that we added there, and then the much wider kind of grayish shadow that we added to it, so that's the second text shadow value that we added there. In step 11 now, we want to go to the figure box styles section of the style sheet that we're working in there. Create a style rule for the figure element that sets the top and bottom margin to 10 pixels and the left and right margin to auto, so that should center up that image that we have. And we want to set the width of the element to 70%. So we're down underneath the figure box styles here. Figure is the selector that we're going to use. That's the image is contained within a figure element. Setting the margin to 10 top and bottom, and then auto left and right, and the width to 70%. Let's save that. Let's preview it in the browser. And there you see it has indeed centered up the image on the page. So using auto left and right works really good for aligning your images centered within a figure element. In step 11, now we're going to modify the appearance of the figure box image. We're going to create a style rule for the image within the figure box that sets the border width to 25 pixels, sets the border style to solid, and then applies the TB frame PNG file as a border image with a slice size of 60 pixels stretched across the sides. Then we want to display the image as a block within the width of 100%, so that's inside of the actual figure element, just fills up the figure element. We'll also apply a sepia tone to the image with a value of 80%, and then use the vendor-specific extension for WebKit. So this is going to be the image within the figure, so we use figure space image as the selector there. We're setting the border width to 25 pixels. The border style is solid, and then the border image using the URL function is going to call up this image here and position it with a size of 60 pixels stretched inside of the width that we assign there, the border width that we assign there. So the image itself, the TB PNG, let's take a look at that here, or TB frame. It's this image right here. So it's not designed to be specifically for the image that we're using, so that's why we use the stretched value there that makes it sized properly to fit the image that we're going to be using. Then we're displaying the image as a block element. Width is 100%, so just fitting it inside of the figure element full width. And then we're applying the filter of sepia at 0.8 or 80% there. And then we have the WebKit, the vendor-specific extension for WebKit above that. So let's go ahead and save that and take a look at the impact that it's had on our page. So there you can see the border being stretched around the image. Then in step 13, we want to create a style rule for the figure caption that displays the text using the font stack of Palatino linotype, just plain Palatino, or Times New Roman, and if none of those fonts exist, then serif will be the default font. We'll set the style to italic, set the top-bottom padding to 10 pixels, and the left-right padding to 0 pixels, and center the text. So we're targeting the fig caption element now inside of that figure element. Here is our font family, the Palatino linotype, so it's a space in the font name, so we want to make sure that we have quotes around that name. Then comma, Palatino, plain, and then another spaced family name, so Times space New Roman, so that has to be in quotes as well, and then comma, serif for the default. Setting the font style to italic. The padding is going to be 10 pixels, top and bottom, 0 pixels, left and right, and we're setting the text align value to center. So let's go ahead and preview that. And there is the impact that we just had on the font or the figure caption. In step 14, we're going to go to the articles section, and in here we're going to create borders and backgrounds for the article that Linda Ferris White wrote about her mother. We'll create a style rule for the article element that displays the background image using this file here, tb_back6.png, and that'll be placed down in the bottom right corner of the element, and that'll have a size of 15%, no tiling. And then we're going to add an 8-pixel border, double border, with a color value of RGB 147, 116, 168 to the right bottom side of the article. Then we'll create a curved bottom right corner with a radius of 80 pixels, and then add an interior shadow with a horizontal and vertical offset of -10 pixels, 25 pixel blur, and using the color value of RGBA 184, 154, 112.7. So we're going into the article styles section now. Using article as the selector, here is the background declaration, again using the URL function so that we can identify the file that we're going to use as the background image. Position it to the bottom right, 15% in size, and no repeat. Then we're adding a border to the right that's going to be 8 pixels of type double, so that's just the style of the line. RGB is 147, 116, 68. Then we add the same to the border bottom, so 8 pixels double and the same RGB value. And then we set the bottom right radius of the border to 80 pixels. So the top left and right and the bottom left corners of this border will be right angles, but in the bottom right we're going to have a radius set to 80 pixels. And then we also add a box shadow to there that's going to be inset, so that means it moves to the inside of the border area, inside of the article area. And using the RGBA value of 184, 154, 112, and 70% opacity. And then positioning it -10 horizontal, -10 vertical, and blur of 25. So let's save that. Go ahead and take a look in the browser here. So here you can see as that border, see we've got the right angles all the way around. And then we only applied the double border to the right and to the bottom, and then in the bottom right we gave it that 80 pixel radius. And then also we did this little insert here with the lady that actually wrote the article, which is Linda Ferris White. And now in step 15, Kevin wants a gradient background for the page footer. So So we're going to go to the footer style section in the style sheet, create a style rule for the footer that adds a linear gradient background with an angle of 325 degrees. And the color going from RGB 180, 148, 104 with a color stop at 20% of the gradient length to the final value of RGB 40, 33, 23 with a color stop at 60%. So when you're identifying gradients, that's how we do that. We identify the percentage, give how much each color's percentage value is, and then let the computer actually figure out the gradient for us. So we're down in the footer section now of our style sheet. So footer is the selector. We're setting the background to a linear gradient, 325 degrees. The starting color is this RGB 180, 148, 104. It'll go up through the 20% of the width of the footer. And then we'll apply the second color of RGB 40, 33, 23, and it will fill up the point from 60% to 100%. So the first color is 0 to 20, the second color is 60 to 100, and then we're going to have the computer figure out the actual gradient for us. So let's save that, take a look, see what that looks like. So here is the gradient here at the bottom with the nav section. And you can see that the essential change that we're getting here is kind of right here at just past the 20% mark. Here it's going to, past the 20% mark here, and then past the 60% mark here is where we have the two initial values. So this one here is going from 0 to 20, and this one here is going from 60 to 100, and then the gradient is in between those two. Okay, so that's it for that page. Now we're going to move on to the Kathleen Ferris page, and there's 3 images on this page. You can see that this is the effect now that we want to apply to each of those images. So when we go to the Kathleen file now, we want to add links for tb_base.css, tb_styles4.css, and tb_visual4.css. So here we are in the Kathleen file. Underneath of the title in the head section here, that's where we'll add our links for tb_base.css, tb_styles4.css, and tb_visual4.css. Now we'll go into the tb_visual4 CSS file, scroll down to the transformation styles section, and we'll add a style rule for the article element to set the size of the perspective space to 800 pixels. So we're in tb_visual4 CSS. We're using article as the selector, and right under transformation styles there we add the rule for the article with the declaration of perspective, 800 px. So we won't see any change initially here. I'll just go and show you. We'll go ahead and open up the Kathleen page here in the browser. We don't see any change initially until we change the z-axis, or add a value in there for the z-axis, and then what we've just put in there as far as the perspective of 800 pixels, that will determine then how much perspective we get when we apply the transforms to these images. So in step 19 now, we'll create a style rule for the figure 1 element, or the one that's ID'd as figure 1 within the figure box, and we'll translate it to a negative 120 pixels along the z-axis. So we just have an image inside of a figure element, and it's ID'd as figure 1, and then we set the transform property to translate for the z-axis, and then in parentheses negative 120 px. So let's save that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Kathleen page here in our browser. Now we really don't see much of a difference here. You'd have to compare the before and the after to notice this, but really what happened here is the image just got a little bit smaller. Before we applied those two styles, it was larger. It was closer up to the title underneath of the Kathleen Ferris text there, and it was a little bit larger. So we basically reduced it by doing the negative 120 there. We reduced it by 20%. because the z-axis, remember, is the 3D axis, the in and out axis essentially, the forward or backward, not left and right. You'll be able to see the perspectives better once we in the transforms, but when we do the other two pictures here. So in step 20, we're going to create a style rule for figure 2 where we'll translate it to a negative 20 pixels along the y-axis as well as rotate it to 50% around the y-axis. So that's now, as you can see in the image above here, we start to get more of that perspective look that you would expect. So this rule is going to target figure 2, and we're going to translate in the y direction. So that's the vertical direction, negative 20 px, and then also rotate it 50 degrees. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. There you can see the picture in the bottom left-hand corner. And then in step 21, we create a style rule for figure 3, which is the image on the right there. Translate it 30 pixels along the y-axis and rotate it negative 50 degrees around the y-axis. So there we are, where figure 3 is transformed again in the y-axis, this time negative 30 degrees, and then rotated negative 50 degrees. Also in the y-axis. So we'll save that. Now we should see the picture on the right has been modified. Okay, next page. Just a few more steps here. In step 22, we're going to now go to the filter styles section in the CSS page that we're working on. And we want to make sure that we include the WebKit browser extension in the styles that we're going to be asked to complete here. So first we create a style rule for figure 1 inside of the figure box that applies a saturation filter of a value of 1.3. So that increases the saturation to 130% essentially. So going underneath filter styles, targeting again our figure 1, we added the WebKit vendor specific extension for saturate, and then just the normal filter here for saturate. Again, the value is 1.3. We'll go ahead and take a look at that. And there you can see it increased the saturation by 30%. I mean, you couldn't tell that's 30%, but you can tell the saturation of the image has been increased, meaning that the color is more intense than it was previously. In step 23, we create a style rule for figure 2, and we're going to set a brightness change to it. We're going to darken it up a little bit, so we're going to set it to 0.8, so 80% of the normal of the brightness that it currently is, and then also we'll increase the contrast to 150%, 1.5. Okay, so again, targeting figure 2. We've got the WebKit extension in there for brightness and contrast, and then we just have the normal filter property and the brightness and contrast values of 0.8 for brightness and 1.5 for contrast. So let's save it, view it in the browser. So that's the one on the left there. You can see it's much more has a lot more contrast to it than it did previously. And the brightness has been reduced a little bit. Unless you had the original and the change compared side by side, that's kind of hard to tell. Okay, and then step 24 here, we'll create a style rule for figure 3. We're going to set the hue rotation to 170%, so that means you're shifting the base color, the hue value of the image, and then we'll apply a saturation value to 3, so that's like 300%, and a brightness to 1.5, so increasing that to 150%. Okay, so there's figure 3, WebKit extension for the filter, and then in this case we're using hue rotate 170 degrees, so shifting the color value, saturation being increased quite a bit, 300%, and then brightness 150%. So let's save that, take a look at the page in the browser. And there you can see the shift in the hue, so it changed it to more of a bluish color and increased the brightness on there and also the saturation of the color. And so that pretty much is it for review assignment number 4. So let's just remind you then, we've got 2 pages that we changed here. We've got the Ferris page, which was the home page, and we did a lot here. We added a background, we added a shadow left and right externally, and then internally using inset. We added a frame around the border. We added an image map so that when you click on either one of these pictures here, it'll bring up the actual image, or I should say the page, for that particular person. We also added the white shadow around the family, and then the darker drop shadow on the background there, and then we added a border down here, also a background image, which is the pattern that we see here, and then the one in the lower right hand corner as well. And then we also modified the styles for the Kathleen Ferris page, which affected the perspective and also the saturation, the brightness, the contrast. And in the case of this one in the right hand corner here, we affected the hue value of it as well. So those are the items that I'll be looking for when scoring your assignment. Until next time, happy coding. If you liked this video, please click the like button and leave us a comment down below. I also would appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, click the notification bell so that you'll be notified when new videos are posted.